So the Cavaliers, they're actually a pretty good team. They got a lot of young talent. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. Donovan Mitchell had a 71-point game this past season. But in the playoffs, they came up short. And ultimately, they are missing a big piece. And this offseason, they might actually get that. Paul George, according to the Steinline, a pretty legit source, is being weighed by the Clippers, and the Clippers are giving real consideration to the idea of disassembling the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George duo. And part of that reason is because this duo just flat out cannot stay healthy on the court. And the Clippers, they want to look at the idea of kind of blowing that up and potentially this being a Kawhi Leonard show with some pieces around that. And the Blazers actually briefly discussed Paul George for a Scoot Henderson swap. And also the Knicks and Clippers have discussed a Paul George trade. So that goes to show you that Paul George for the Clippers is being weighed in a lot of different trade discussions. And the biggest thing is that Brian Whitehorse talked about Cavs on a podcast.
But I wish I could tell you more, and I know I shouldn't tease you, but there's one thing out there that I heard that just look on social media in this last week and see what you see.
Now that could mean a lot of things, but based on how sources are talking about Paul George, this definitely could mean that Paul George is going to be a new addition for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Even Jerry West was talking about how Kawhi Leonard and Paul George just can't stay healthy on the court.
Two players the caliber of you and Kawhi can't play half the season. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crazy. Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I think they will trade Paul George because the Clippers and Kawhi Leonard, every single year, they just can't stay healthy. And it would be silly of them to at least not entertain the idea of trading Paul George. Now, a very realistic trade for you Cleveland Cavaliers fans out there is that a trade would send Jared Allen, Cedi Osman, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, and picks for Paul George. Now, that is a pretty big haul for the Los Angeles Clippers. They're getting a lot in the trade. They're getting actually a lot of young talent. Jared Allen, one of the best shot blocking centers in the NBA. Cedi Osman, a player that has somewhat potential. Isaac Okoro, one of the best small forward young talent players. And Dean Wade, a solid role player. And obviously picks going to the Los Angeles Clippers. I think that move right there ultimately will actually make the Clippers a better team. And moving on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, they obviously get Paul George. It's going to be a big three with Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, and Darius Garland. You at least got to give that a try. Paul George is probably the best small forward in the entire league if he's actually healthy.
My go-to basketball is Paul George.
And I think ultimately the Cleveland Cavaliers would definitely just at least give that a try, because that right there would be an amazing team. You got Paul George at the small forward position, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. Darius Garland, one of the best point guards in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell, best shooting guards, and Paul George. That's going to be an offensive onslaught. Now, recently in the NBA, teams that are like big threes like that doesn't really work out. But I also think, the Cleveland Cavaliers should give it a try. Like, they're not really losing that much because they still are keeping their main people like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and even Evan Mobley. They're still keeping Evan Mobley, so they're pretty much still keeping their young core, but they're just giving up some of their other second tier young talent in Jared Allen, Cedi Osman, and Isaac Okoro. And even they're still keeping Imani Bates. And ultimately, I think Imani Bates will get a lot of minutes as the backup small forward for Paul George, because Imani Bates, in my opinion, was one of the best players in the NBA draft. And probably Evan Mobley will be moved to the center position. And overall, I think that would be an amazing trade for both teams. So what do you guys think about this potential trade? I think it is definitely might happen. You know what I'm saying? With that being said, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. It's your boy Josh Riarch, and I'm out.